The call no one answered. The distress signal was faint, barely a ripple in the endless sea of stars. Carried on broken frequencies distorted by interference and static, it whispered across the void. This is Veen 4. We are under attack. Cities are burning. They're executing civilians. Please, anyone. And then silence. Across the galaxy in the luminous halls of the Galactic Council, the signal flickered briefly on a console screen before being dismissed. Another backwater colony falling apart. Another problem far away. Diplomats shook their heads and murmured about sovereignty, non-interference treaties, and acceptable losses. No one came. But Veen 4 wasn't just any world. It was a human colony. And humanity does not forget its own. The skies of Veen 4 were ablaze. Blackened clouds rolled across the horizon, churning with ash and fire. The once proud cities were crumbling under the might of the ARX Dominion, a ruthless expansionist empire that swept through defenseless worlds like a scythe through grass. Their ships loomed overhead, massive and predatory, raining destruction from the stratosphere. On the ground, their soldiers were worse. Clad in dark, segmented armor and speaking in guttural tones, they moved through the streets like reapers. Any resistance was met with immediate death. Civilians who couldn't run fast enough were herded or executed. Entire districts were razed simply to send a message: you are nothing. Your world is ours. In the capital city of Lorentha, a boy named Nico huddled with his little sister inside a collapsed building. Outside, the sound of metal boots echoed against pavement, growing closer. Their mother had run out an hour ago to find food. She hadn't come back. Nico clutched his sister tighter. He looked up at the scorched sky. Please, he whispered, somebody help us. Far above, the Galactic Council convened an urgent session, not about Veen 4, but about trade sanctions on Corelli spice routes. News of the invasion had reached them days ago. They had all seen the footage, the fires, the screaming, but they did nothing. The ARX Dominion was a power no one dared to provoke. To intervene would risk full-scale war. Veen 4, they argued, held no strategic value. It was just another colony and the humans were too fractured to respond. Let them scream into the void, one diplomat muttered. The void does not answer, but someone did hear the scream. On the edge of Terran space, a massive shipyard buzzed with activity. Inside the central command hub of Erebus Station, a technician stared at the signal, jaw clenched. We got a ping from Veen 4, he muttered. They're still alive. Barely. Behind him, a voice like granite spoke. Prepare the fleet. The technician turned eyes wide. Admiral Vance, sir, we're not asking the council. We're not waiting for permission. Launch the alert. Activate the armada. But the protocol, Vance's eyes cold and unflinching, cut him off. They attacked a human world. That makes this personal. Within hours, a force that should not have existed emerged from hyperspace. 500 Terran warships. The galaxy had long believed that Earth no longer had the means or the unity to project power. Humanity had been written off as emotional, reckless, divided. But while the rest of the galaxy postured and preached peace, Earth had remembered war. They had never stopped building, never stopped training, and they had never stopped watching. The flagship led the formation, a dreadnought named Indomitable, bristling with weaponry that defied classification. It was colossal, its hull a dark alloy that drank light, its silhouette jagged and predatory. At its bridge, Admiral Elias Vance stood with hands behind his back, watching the planet loom larger on the viewport. Fires dotted its surface like open wounds. He didn't blink. Status, he asked. All systems green. Drop pods are prepped. Rail batteries are primed, replied Captain Leah Monroe. Then let's make this loud, Vance said. Broadcast to all channels. A pause, then his voice echoed across every band, every frequency, including the open ARX channels. This is Admiral Elias Vance of the Terran Defense Fleet. Veen 4 called for help. You didn't answer. We did. He turned to the weapons officer. Begin orbital bombardment. The sky split open. Massive kinetic slugs the size of buildings tore through the upper atmosphere. The ARX warships, caught off guard, scrambled to intercept but were too slow. The first round of fire shattered a Dominion cruiser into 3 burning halves. A second pierced a command carrier and sent it crashing into the ocean. From above, the Terran fleet rained fury. From below, stunned ARX troops watched as the sky turned red. Then came the drop pods, hundreds of them. They struck the planet like thunderbolts, fast, brutal, precise. From within, Terran soldiers emerged, heavily armored, Heavily armed, no battle cry, no mercy. They moved like ghosts through flame and ash, carving paths through the invaders with clinical precision. They didn't come to negotiate. They came to remind the galaxy of something it had forgotten. Humanity doesn't beg. Humanity fights back. And when they do, they come with fire. Humanity strikes back. The ARX Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds. They believed themselves untouchable, an empire carved from blood and fear. Their fleets were massive, their armies relentless. No one had dared challenge them in a generation. But they made one mistake. They touched a human colony. Now humanity had touched back with a closed fist. The Indomitable tore across the upper atmosphere, flanked by sleek Terran destroyers and precision-engineered corvettes. The black void behind them lit up with flares and streaks of anti-ship fire as the ARX scrambled to respond. But the Dominion was built for conquest, not for defense. Their warships, hulking, ornate, overconfident, struggled to match the speed and ferocity of the Terran strike. Admiral Vance stood like a statue on the command bridge, voice low and steady amidst the chaos. Prioritize capital ships. Corvettes cut through their flanks. Drop teams deploy Phase 2. From above, the assault grew brutal. Terran rail cannons fired projectiles that moved at hypersonic speeds, kinetic warheads that struck with the force of small nukes. Shields collapsed, armor buckled. Dominion ships that had once patrolled the stars like gods now broke apart like toys hurled against stone. The ARX hadn't prepared for a human response. They didn't think Earth had the numbers. They didn't think Earth had the ships. But worst of all, they didn't think Earth had the will. On the surface of Veen 4, the Dominion occupation dissolved into panic. Streets that had once echoed with ARX boots now ran slick with alien blood. From drop pods and mobile insertion crafts came Terran infantry clad in exosuits, hulking frames of steel, and carbon fiber glowing with HUD tracers and battlefield telemetry. They didn't march. They advanced like predators. Every unit was trained in planetary warfare. Every soldier knew urban combat like muscle memory. From alleys to rooftops, they moved with grim precision. A squad leader named Sergeant Miles reported in from District 9. Resistance broken, civilians secure, clearing sector. Then came the heavy weapons platforms, walkers, drones, gunships. Veen 4 didn't become a battlefield. It became a cleansing fire. Admiral Vance watched from orbit as data streamed into his HUD. The ARX flagship is trying to break away, Monroe said, pointing to the tactical map. Looks like they're cutting their losses. Don't let them, Vance said coldly. Redirect all long-range cannons. Paint it red. The Indomitable's forward batteries aligned. A heartbeat later, 6 glowing tungsten rounds, each weighing over 200 tons, were launched in sequence. The ARX flagship, once a symbol of Dominion, might cracked in half, its reactor breached. A silent explosion bloomed in space, a pulse of light and death. There was no cheer on the bridge, no celebration, only silence. Down below in the ruins of Lorentha, the Terran advance pushed through the last remaining ARX lines. The Dominion soldiers, disoriented and outmatched, fired wildly, desperately. But against Terran exo armor, their rifles barely scratched. A Terran soldier ripped open a barricade with one arm and lobbed a shock grenade into a makeshift bunker. The resulting detonation silenced the position instantly. Nearby, Nico, the boy who had once begged for help, peeked from the collapsed building. He saw the Terran soldiers moving through the smoke. Not conquerors, not monsters, but saviors. One of them stopped and looked down at him, visor retracting to reveal a scarred woman with steely eyes. "You okay, kid?" He nodded, numb. She handed him a ration bar and pointed toward a refugee corridor. "Follow the light strips. You're safe now." He didn't believe her until he did. The Dominion broke within hours. By the time the last ARX cruiser attempted a warp jump out of the system, the Terran blockade was in full effect. Interdiction fields caught the fleeing ship mid-jump, collapsing its drive and tearing it apart mid-phase. No escape, no survivors. Veen 4 was free. Admiral Vance stood at the observation deck looking down at the planet's scarred surface. Fires still smoldered. Smoke drifted over broken cities. Bodies, Terran and ARX alike, littered the streets. But the gunfire had stopped. Behind him, Captain Monroe entered. Her armor was still dusted with ash from the ground campaign. "Ground resistance has ceased," she reported. "We're collecting the wounded, still counting casualties. It's not good, sir." Vance didn't respond for a moment. Then he whispered more to himself than to her. "We were too late." Monroe remained silent. She knew the pain behind those words. Thousands had died before the fleet arrived, entire neighborhoods vaporized, families erased. But she also knew what this meant. For Veen 4, for Earth, for the galaxy. Vance turned to the comms officer. Open a broadcast. The young lieutenant complied, and a moment later his voice echoed across Veen 4. Across radios, holoscreens, and emergency channels. Across battle-scarred cities and refugee shelters. This is Admiral Elias Vance of the Terran Defense Fleet. The ARX Dominion forces have been neutralized. The enemy is defeated. Veen 4 is free. No one else came. We did. Because when humanity is called, we answer. Not with promises, not with negotiations, with fire. He paused, voice hardening. To the ARX, you thought we were fractured. You thought we were weak. You were wrong, and you will never forget this day. In the distant halls of the Galactic Council, the broadcast was received like a thunderclap. Delegates stared in stunned silence as footage of Dominion ships burning lit up the central screen. Veen 4 had been saved by a species they had long considered obsolete. In the ARX Dominion homeworld, a different scene unfolded. Warlords sat in silence, watching the wreckage of their fleet spin helplessly across the void. They weren't supposed to fight like this, one whispered. They weren't supposed to care. The Supreme Warlord leaned forward, 6 eyes burning. Then we were wrong. Echoes in the council. Inside the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, the air was heavy with unease. The central display flickered, replaying the footage in painful loops, Dominion warships shattering in low orbit, Terran drop pods slamming into urban centers, soldiers in black and silver exo armor moving through fire like wraiths. And then the voice of Admiral Elias Vance, calm, cold, final. You thought no one would come. You were wrong. No one spoke. No one blinked. The galaxy hadn't just seen humanity fight, they'd seen them win. Decisively, mercilessly, like an apex predator reclaiming its place. Counselor Valen of the Zephyr Union broke the silence, rubbing the blue scales along his brow. This is madness, he muttered. They shouldn't have had the numbers. The technology, not after centuries of infighting and economic collapse. A quiet voice answered him from across the chamber. They had it, and more. All eyes turned to the ARX Dominion's representative, Warlord Cyan. He stood with a rigid posture, but his eyes blazed with barely restrained fury. His people had never known defeat like this. Now the scars were visible, the pain raw. The Terrans were underestimated, he said. We believed them fractured. That belief cost us an entire fleet. And what now, croaked Counselor Orvis of the Sayari Alliance. What are you suggesting? Retaliation? If we don't respond, Cian growled, we invite worse. Another voice rose from the shadows, calm, measured. It belonged to High Speaker Luthen of the Veen Coalition, an ancient reclusive species known for their long memories and strategic patience. We have watched humanity for centuries, he said, assumed them chaotic, unorganized, consumed by internal wars. He gestured to the central screen. But this was not chaos, this was unity, swift, surgical, terrifying. They didn't just act, he continued. They didn't ask, they didn't hesitate. They decided. That is not the behavior of a weak race. Another murmur spread through the chamber, some in fear, some in awe. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the Dominion's war hall, a storm brewed. High Warlord Vathan stood before the grand conclave of surviving Dominion leaders. The fires of Veen 4 had barely cooled, and already the scent of humiliation hung in the air like rot. We were wrong, he declared. His voice thundered through the chamber, silencing all. We thought the humans primitive, petty, isolated, but they were waiting. He gestured toward the shattered remains of his fleet displayed in 3D projection above them. They came with ships the likes of which we've never seen, tactics we could not predict, weapons that bypassed our shields as if they were paper. They fought like beings with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. His words echoed with bitter pride. But worst of all, they weren't afraid. The other warlords shifted uneasily. Many of them had never known a battle lost. Some had laughed at the Terrans, mocked their past, their politics, their inability to project galactic power. Now they watched with grim silence. They didn't fight for conquest, Vathan growled. They fought for vengeance, for justice, and they did not come to talk. Back in the council, Chancellor Veen of the Eldari Accord leaned forward, voice soft but urgent. We must ask ourselves, he said, a question that may shape the next 1,000 years. He looked around the chamber, eyes filled with something rare for an Eldari fear. Are the humans our allies or our doom? On the scarred surface of Veen 4, the answer was being written in blood and steel. Terran engineers worked alongside survivors to rebuild infrastructure. Power grids, water lines, hospitals and ruins were replaced by prefabs dropped from orbit, Drones cleared debris as refugees emerged from the wreckage of their homes. Captain Monroe walked among them, her armor still scorched from battle, her expression unreadable. She passed a young girl huddled in a corner, clutching a dirty stuffed animal. Monroe stopped, knelt, and offered the child a ration bar. The girl looked at her with wide, empty eyes. Monroe forced a smile. "It's okay now, you're safe." The child didn't answer, but slowly she reached out and took the food. In the command chamber of the Indomitable, Admiral Vance stared at a holographic star chart. Red markers flared across several systems, Dominion strongholds. Reinforcements, movement. The war was not over. He knew it hadn't even started. Monroe stepped in beside him, arms folded. "The Council's debating our existence now," she said with a bitter chuckle. "Guess we made an impression." "They won't act," Vance replied. "They'll posture, argue, delay. The ARX won't." "You think they'll strike again?" He nodded. "They won't just hit another colony next time." Monroe's face darkened. Earth. He didn't need to say it. They both knew. Veen 4 had been a test, a probe, a message. But humanity's response had rewritten the equation. Now the Dominion was wounded, and wounded empires don't retreat. They retaliate. In the Dominion throne chamber, the Primarch of the ARX stood in stillness. 6 golden eyes burned with cold intensity. "The humans," he whispered, "brought war to our doorstep." He turned to his generals. "If they want war," his claws scraped across the armrest of his throne, "then we shall bring them extinction." The calm before the fire. The skies above Earth churned with preparation. Orbital shipyards pulsed with activity, lit by the glow of welding arcs and plasma torches. Supply freighters moved like blood cells in a steel circulatory system, feeding life into warships being armed, refitted, and reassigned. And above it all, the Indomitable floated like a sleeping titan, silent, coiled, and very much awake. Admiral Elias Vance stood on the observation platform of the United Terran Command Center in Geneva, watching as the new wave of ships from Mars arrived in formation. Sleek destroyers, refit dreadnoughts, even converted civilian haulers bristling with gun platforms. Captain Monroe joined him, datapad in hand. 20 warships from the Martian shipyards, 6 more inbound from Titan, she reported. Ground forces rotating through final stage combat simulations. Morale's high, sir. Everyone knows what's coming. Vance didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on the stars beyond the station's transparent dome. "They think they're ready," he said quietly. "They're not." Monroe arched a brow. "You think we can't win?" He finally turned to her, his voice hardening. "I think we haven't even begun to understand what we're about to face." Across the galaxy, the ARX Dominion was mobilizing. Not a battle group, not an invasion force. An armada, thousands of warships pulled from every Dominion sector. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, siege platforms capable of melting planetary crust, hunter-killer swarms designed to eliminate survivors and sterilize biospheres. The harbinger of extinction, a vessel forged in the dark core of the Dominion's oldest shipyard, was placed at the fleet's center. At its helm, the Primarch himself. He spoke only once as the fleet prepared for its final journey. "We will not stop at surrender. We will not stop at victory. We will stop at obliteration." On Earth, the storm had not yet arrived, but everyone could feel it. Cities entered lockdown protocols. Spaceports became military hubs. Schools became bunkers. Families said silent goodbyes. Children were taught how to find the nearest shelter. Grav trains carried weapons, not passengers. Humanity was not running, they were bracing. In the command war room deep beneath Geneva, the final strategy was laid out. The room was filled with the best minds the Terran Defense Fleet had, admirals, generals, strategists, AI-assisted analysts. President Alan Graves stood among them, his jaw set. Vance tapped the hollow table and the solar system flared to life in red and blue. "They'll come straight through the outer system," he said. "Their goal is Earth. They won't stop. They won't bargain. They want us erased." He gestured to the outer planets. "We let them think they're winning. We feint at Jupiter, make it look like our lines are breaking. We draw them inward." Then the model shifted. A hidden fleet behind Luna, subterranean batteries on Mars, cloaked warships beyond Pluto. "When they commit to the final push, we close the jaws." He looked up at Graves. "We don't match them ship for ship. We outthink them. We make them bleed. We make them pay." Graves nodded, and if the trap fails, Vance didn't hesitate. "Then we die loud." As the plan spread through the Terran ranks, the soldiers didn't flinch. They'd seen Veen 4. They knew what the ARX were capable of, and they didn't care. Sergeant Miles, now recovered from the ground campaign, addressed his squad as they loaded drop gear onto the carrier Resolute. "This isn't just about Earth," he said. This is about every colony they've burned, every kid they scared, every damn time they looked down on us. He pulled on his helmet. We don't let that stand. Not on our watch. At the Lunar Defense Station, Aegis buried deep beneath the moon's dark side, Admiral Vance walked the silent corridors. The halls were tight, dimly lit, packed with stealth tech and bristling with classified weaponry. This was the heart of the ambush, a final card, and no one outside Terran Command even knew it existed. Monroe followed, glancing over the readiness checklist. All systems green, she said. Firing solutions mapped, automated defense grids synced with main fleet AI. Civilians, Vance asked. Evacuated. What's left is hunkered deep. Everyone else dug in. He stopped, turned to her. You know this won't stop with Earth, right? She nodded. If we lose everything. And far beyond the orbit of Pluto, hidden in deep space voids so cold even light forgot them, Terran stealth ships awaited a single signal. Their crews trained in total silence. No radio, no idle chatter. Just breathing. Just focus. They didn't expect glory. They expected to be the last line, or the first spark of vengeance if Earth fell. 3 days later, the ARX arrived. Like a silent tsunami, their fleet blotted out the stars as it entered the outer solar system. Scout posts near Neptune blinked offline. Listening stations at the Kuiper Belt went dark. They didn't knock. They didn't send demands. They came to end. In the Geneva War Room, alarms blared. Red lights pulsed along the ceiling. The hollow table lit up in full crimson. They're here, whispered one officer. Thousands of ships, multiple vector paths, flank screens, capital siege vessels, antimatter payloads. President Graves looked to Vance. This is it. Vance nodded, calm in the eye of the storm. He tapped a single control. Broadcast fleet signal Delta Zero. Across the Terran Armada, one message lit up every display. They're in the net. Stay cold. Wait for the snap. As the Dominion Armada surged past Saturn, Earth looked like a vulnerable jewel in the distance, unprotected, exposed. They didn't see what lay behind the moon. They didn't see the cloaked ships along the Martian dust. They didn't know what lurked beyond the asteroid fields. The galaxy had mocked Earth for preparing for a war no one believed would come. Now Earth smiled in silence. The trap was set. The battle for Earth begins. The ARX Dominion swept into Earth's backyard like a tidal wave of death. 2,000 warships blotting out the stars. Battle cruisers bristling with siege cannons. Swarms of drone harvesters pouring from hangar bays like angry hornets. The void churned with the heat of reactors, the pulse of ion drives, and the quiet hum of extinction. From the bridge of this harbinger of extinction, the Primarch stood tall, his 6 golden eyes scanning the pale blue world in the distance. Target the Terran homeworld, he ordered. Begin orbital bombardment preparations. Burn it to ash. Across Earth, alarms screamed. Emergency shelters sealed their bulkheads. Last wave transports rocketed into fortified hangars. Anti-orbital weapon platforms powered up from their mountain silos. And in the sky, high above the Terran Armada waited. Silent, still, coiled. On the Indomitable, Admiral Vance stared at the holotable. Red indicators danced across the screen. Enemy fleets were approaching Earth's gravity well at high velocity. One more push, and they'd be in position to fire. They've committed, Captain Monroe whispered. Vance didn't blink. Then it's time. He tapped a command. All units, Operation Netbreaker is live. Make them regret ever coming here. The trap detonated. From behind the moon, 300 Terran warships emerged from magnetic cloak arrays. Dreadnoughts, destroyers, interceptors. Massive rail cannons roared to life and fired point blank at the ARX flank. From Mars, concealed batteries opened fire, hypervelocity slugs slicing through Dominion formations like molten blades. From deep space beyond Pluto, stealth fleets decloaked and surged inward, cutting off retreat vectors, jammers, grav mines, interdictors. The ARX Armada, so massive, so arrogant, was now encircled. They hadn't walked into battle. They had walked into a kill box. Contact across all fronts, Monroe barked. We have multiple Dominion lines collapsing under surprise barrage. Push the pressure, Vance said. No quarter, no escape. The Indomitable moved forward, railguns cycling hot. Its broadside unleashed a barrage that split a Dominion command ship in 2 shrapnels, scattering like dying stars. On the front lines, Terran corvettes weaved between larger ARX vessels, delivering pinpoint strikes to engines, bridge modules, and shield generators. Exo-fighters launched from planetary bays swarmed across the battlefield like flocks of hawks, maneuverable, furious, unforgiving. The Dominion returned fire, but they were firing blind, surrounded, staggered. On the harbinger of extinction, the Primarch's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped a degree colder. "We are not prey," he hissed. "We are the sword." He turned to his fleet commanders. "Retaliate. Shatter their lines. Overwhelm their weak points. Break Earth beneath our heel." Orders echoed through the Dominion armada. Dozens of ships broke formation, redirecting power to forward batteries. Hundreds of drones were unleashed in waves. Countermeasures deployed. The sky lit up with overlapping firestorms. But humanity was ready. They didn't try to hold a perfect line. They flowed like water, adapted, flexed. When a ship fell, another moved into its place. When the front thinned, the AI-controlled defense grids filled the gap with precision fire. In orbit, the battle reached a fever pitch. A Terran carrier, the Atlas Rise, was hit by concentrated fire and began to break apart, its spine glowing red-hot. But before it could detonate its final payload, dozens of Thanatos drones was launched directly into a Dominion capital ship. The drones detonated in sequence, forming a chain reaction that tore the enemy vessel in half. Vance watched the data scroll past. "We're holding," Monroe said, sweat on her brow. "Not enough," Vance muttered. "They're bleeding, but they're not retreating." He pointed to the harbinger of extinction, holding its position in the rear. "That ship's the nerve center. We kill it. We kill their command structure. Suicide run." He turned toward her, calm. "Call it what it is, sacrifice with purpose." Elsewhere in low orbit, Sergeant Miles and his company were aboard a boarding craft plummeting toward a Dominion dreadnought. Anti-air screamed past them. Hull plating glowed from friction and plasma grazes. He clutched his rifle tighter. "You know the drill," he said over comms. "We land, we breach, we gut the bridge, make them feel it up close." Someone muttered, "We're not even supposed to be here." Miles grinned inside his helmet. "Exactly, let's ruin their day." As Earth's defense grid began to reach its limit, the Terran Command initiated Phase 2 cross-orbital barrages using deep-sync targeting relays. Missiles fired from Antarctica hit ships over the Indian Ocean. Lunar cannons sniped destroyers over Tokyo. Every inch of the planet fought back. It wasn't just an army defending Earth, it was the entire world. Civilians from rural bunkers helped load ammunition. Scientists rerouted power from labs to shield generators. Civilians turned repair drones into kamikaze payloads. This wasn't a military stand, it was species-wide defiance. Then came the turning point. The Harbinger shifted. Its prow glowed with sickly light, charging an antimatter beam aimed directly at Earth's surface. They weren't going to win this battle. They were going to erase the board. On the Indomitable warning, Klaxon screamed. "Charging at 10 seconds to fire," Monroe shouted. Vance's hands clenched. "We end this now." He activated command override. The entire bridge went silent. "All ships," he said over the fleet-wide comms, "converge on the Harbinger. Priority target, this ends now." Dozens of Terran ships surged forward. They took fire. They lost hulls. They kept going. The Indomitable led the charge, its engines flaring brighter than ever before. At that moment, across the battlefield, all other sounds dimmed. There was only one thought left in every Terran mind. "We do not let Earth fall." Breaking the Dominion. The Indomitable roared forward like a beast unchained. Every plasma thruster flared white-hot. Every weapon system burned red from overuse. Its forward shields rippled from hundreds of hits, but it did not stop. It couldn't. Behind it, half the Terran fleet moved in tandem. Missile destroyers, close-range interceptors, corvettes weaving between fire to screen the advance. The target, the harbinger of extinction, the ARX's command fortress, still charging its antimatter lance. 6 seconds to full charge, Monroe shouted. "Shields are buckling. We can't take a direct hit." Admiral Elias Vance didn't flinch. "Then we don't give them the chance." He activated priority override across the fleet. "All strike ships, focus fire. We take it down now." The void erupted. Hundreds of Terran warheads streaked toward the Harbinger, glowing like falling stars. Kinetic railguns roared. Hyperlaser lances drilled across space. Autonomous drones kamikazed into its armor plating. The Harbinger fired early. A blinding, sickly beam of antimatter energy lanced outward, cutting through 2 Terran cruisers like paper before veering off course. The planet was safe for now, but the price had been blood. Inside the Harbinger, the Primarch stood motionless as sparks rained from ruptured conduits. "Critical damage to the primary weapon," his lieutenant rasped. He turned slowly. "Then we destroy them the old way. Bring me the Indomitable." Vance's warship plowed forward, dodging collapsing debris fields and dead Dominion hulls. Every deck shook. Fire spread. Casualty reports rolled in by the second. And still they advanced. "We're breaching their shield envelope," Monroe shouted. Then Punch Through Vance growled, "Bring us to point-blank range." The Indomitable twisted to avoid a salvo. and returned fire with a rail cannon blast so powerful it tore straight through the ARX vessel, protecting the Harbinger's flank, igniting its core. A hole opened in the enemy line, and Vance flew straight through it. From the lower orbit, Sergeant Miles' boarding craft slammed into the side of the Harbinger mag clamps, locking down hard. The hatch blew open with a shock charge, and Terran Marines flooded in, rifles hot, exo-armor hissing, as targeting systems locked on enemy biosignatures. Inside the Dominion warship, the ARX forces fought like monsters, clawed, armored, screeching in alien tongues. But they were no match for the cold discipline of Earth's finest. Room by room, corridor by corridor, the Terrans advanced. "Push to the bridge," Miles shouted. "We end it here." On the Indomitable's bridge, alarm screamed again. "We have hull breaches across 3 decks. We're losing forward shield banks. We won't last another barrage." Vance's jaw tightened. Then he did what few commanders would. He opened the fleet-wide channel. "This is Vance. We've come too far. We've lost too much. This ends now. Final offensive. No retreat. Make the Dominion remember us." Every Terran ship still standing surged forward. Missiles streaked across space like a second sunrise. Fighter squadrons wove impossible paths, dropping antimatter bombs straight into enemy hangars. The sky above Earth was no longer a battlefield. It was a furnace of vengeance. Inside the Harbinger, Sergeant Miles' squad burst into the main command chamber. The Primarch stood at the center, towering, armored in black exoplate, etched with the blood of 1,000 conquests. His 6 golden eyes glowed. "You are insects," he growled. Miles raised his rifle. "Then welcome to the swarm." They opened fire. Explosions rocked his bridge. The Primarch barreled forward like a tank, crushing one Marine with a backhand. But Miles was faster. He vaulted over the command console, planted a high-yield fusion charge onto the core housing, and detonated it mid-roll. The blast knocked everyone flat. The Primarch staggered. Miles stood, armor-cracked, blood dripping from his mouth. He raised a second charge. "Humanity sends its regards." He clicked the trigger. The explosion ripped through the Harbinger's bridge, igniting its internal systems in a chain reaction. Outside, the ship stuttered spasm, then began to implode. From the Indomitable, Monroe stared in disbelief. "The Harbinger! It's going down!" Vance didn't speak. He just watched it burn. Across the battlefield, Dominion ships paused. Their command vessel gone, their Primarchs silenced. What had been a coordinated armada became disarray. Terran AI systems pounced, identifying weaknesses, deploying precision fire in waves. Enemies tried to regroup, failed. Tried to retreat, too late. Human warships folded in on all flanks, creating a crushing vice. No room to maneuver, no space to jump, no hope. On the Indomitable, Vance issued the final order. "All units engage at will. Leave none standing." The Terran fleet obeyed. Rail cannons roared. Plasma lances sang. Nuclear payloads dropped like the wrath of ancient gods. RX vessels exploded one after another, lighting up Earth's orbit like fireworks of vengeance. The last remaining Dominion battleship, its engines damaged, its guns empty, tried to flee. Vance watched it drift, then fired the Indomitable's final salvo. The enemy ship split in two and drifted silently into the void. Silence fell. No more enemy signals. No more fire, just wreckage. Just the stars. Captain Monroe slumped into her chair, breath shaking. "It's over." Vance didn't move. His eyes stayed on the battlefield, the debris field that once was an empire's pride. "No," he said softly. "This was just the beginning." She looked at him. "We won." He met her gaze. "And now they know we can." Across Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People poured into the streets, not to celebrate, to breathe, to cry, to feel again. Children waved flags from rooftop shelters. Elders whispered that they'd live to see a miracle. Soldiers on leave stood at full attention, watching the wreckage fall like broken crowns. But amid the relief, one truth echoed louder than all. Humanity had shattered the Dominion, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The price of victory. The fires above Earth had barely faded when the whispers of vengeance began to echo across the stars. Within the scorched remnants of the ARX Dominion, what few survivors remained limped home, not to regroup, but to report the unthinkable. A galaxy had watched them fall. Their pride shattered. Their fleet turned to drifting corpses in orbit of a world once dismissed as insignificant. On the homeworld of Zeron, the throne chamber of the ARX High Council was draped in silence. Then the doors opened. Warlord Zion limped forward. His body was scarred, his armor shattered, and his voice barely a growl. "They fought like no species we've ever known," he said. "Every move we made, they anticipated. Every tactic countered. They struck without hesitation, without fear." He paused, staring at the floor. "They killed the Primarch." The chamber shook with murmurs. The high warlords of the Dominion, monsters of power and tradition, shifted uneasily in their seats. Many of them had never seen defeat. None had seen humiliation on this scale. From the darkness, the new Primarch emerged, taller, leaner, eyes colder. He stepped into the light, his 6 golden eyes reflecting flames from the ceremonial brazier. "Then we were wrong," he said, "and now we will correct that error." Back on Earth, Admiral Elias Vance stood in the still-burning ruins of the orbital command tower in Geneva. The war room's glass dome had been shattered during the final orbital barrage. Sunlight now poured through, casting long shadows across the room. President Alan Graves arrived beside him, flanked by security. "Casualty reports," Graves asked quietly. "Still coming in," Vance said. 27% fleet loss, 40% infrastructure damage to low orbit, civilian casualties in the millions." Graves didn't speak. Vance turned, eyes hollow but defiant. "We won a battle, but we've lit a fire." In the refugee zones of Southeast Asia, Captain Monroe walked the relief lines. Children stared at the sky in silence. Parents held each other without words. Entire families had been reduced to names on lists. Volunteers distributed water rations, warmth, but not comfort. There was no comfort left. She passed a young boy with a broken arm in a 1,000-yard stare. He didn't cry. He just held a rusted toy starfighter and looked toward the heavens. "Are they coming back?" he asked. She knelt beside him. "Yes," she said, "but so are we." The stars were not silent. From every listening post across known space, Terran intelligence picked up fragments of something vast mobilizing. Unencrypted Dominion signals. Old war codes. Black Fleet movements from across systems thought dormant for centuries. Lieutenant Kaido, head of Terran intelligence, stood before the High Command. "They're not just angry," he said. "They're activating fleets we didn't even know existed. War factories, ancient siege platforms." He tapped a command and a projection and bloomed above the table an ARX superfleet forming across 5 sectors. "They're not planning a counteroffensive. They're planning extermination." President Graves stood still. "Can we win again?" Vance answered without hesitation. "No." "Then softer. Not like last time." Across the Sol system, Earth began to rebuild. But it wasn't rebuilding for peace. It was preparing for obliteration. Every shipyard was redlined. Civilian transports retrofitted into assault barges. Mining drones reprogrammed into orbital saboteurs. Genetic enhancements were rolled out across military ranks. The Thanatos Protocol, once a forbidden experiment, was greenlit for mass production. Every citizen of Earth was now a combatant. Every child a survivor. Every breath taken was one of defiance. In the dark void between systems, humanity's deep space scouts found the first sign of Dominion revenge. A human colony, Regulus Prime, reduced to ash. No survivors. No warning. Just a single Dominion glyph carved into the crust of the planet, next Earth. Inside, the Indomitable still being repaired in geosynchronous orbit, Vance stared at the projection of Regulus's ruins. Captain Monroe stood behind him, silent. "This is the price," Vance said, voice low. "For saving one world?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, for proving we could fight back." He turned toward her. "They thought we were a myth, a memory of an angry species best forgotten. But now they've seen us." He tapped the console. "And they're terrified." Far beyond Terran space, in a fortress carved into an asteroid the size of a moon, the new Primarch addressed the gathered warlords. A colossal star map hovered between them, red clusters glowing over Sol Proxima and every colony humanity had ever touched. "They will build," the Primarch said. "They will prepare." He turned to the crowd. "But so will we." And the preparations began. For every world the Dominion had left dormant, new fleets awakened. For every black project once shelved, new weapons emerged. For every name of a Terran commander, Elias Vance Lee Monroe, Sergeant Miles bounties were declared. Entire species conscripted, bioweapons readied. Because if the humans could break a gun, then the gods would burn their heaven to the ground in retaliation. But Earth was not idle. In the under-ice tunnels of Europa, scientists tested gravitic rupture torpedoes designed to bend time-space around enemy fleets. On Mercury, AI systems ran simulated wars, billions of possibilities every second, searching for the one path to victory. And in the asteroid belt, hidden among mining stations and debris clouds, the Terran vanguard assembled. A ghost fleet, no names, no flags, only one mission. If Earth falls, they fall with us. The war wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. But every shadow across the galaxy now moved differently. Every ruler now whispered humanity's name with caution. And every Dominion child born in silence would grow up hearing of the day the Terrans came with fire. The day the stars changed. Forever. the fire that changed the stars. The largest armada in ARX Dominion history surged through the stars like a living storm. 3,000 warships, siege platforms the size of continents, swarms of hunter-killers blackening entire sectors. Entire star systems cleared in their path. This wasn't war. This was a purge, and their destination was clear Earth. In the Sol system, humanity stood on the edge of annihilation. The United Terran Armada was battered from the last campaign. Only 60% of its original warships remained combat-ready. Supply chains were stretched, morale strained, but no one ran. Every ship that could fly was armed. Every station became a fortress. Even old orbital solar arrays were turned into kinetic bombardment platforms. From Neptune's orbit to the skies over Antarctica, Earth became a wall. Admiral Vance stood once more on the bridge of the Indomitable, rebuilt and reforged in the crucible of desperation. Captain Monroe approached, her voice low. They're through the Kuiper Belt, hours away. Intercept reports estimate 3,000 ships. We can't match that. Vance didn't hesitate. No, he said. We don't need to win. She blinked. Sir. He turned to face her fully. We just need to make them regret coming. As the ARX Armada entered the system, they expected panic. What they found was hell. From hidden positions near Uranus, cloaked Terran stealth ships unleashed the Thanatos Protocol. Dark matter warheads banned by every galactic treaty. The gravitational rifts they created tore apart 200 ships in seconds. From Mars, orbital platforms rained antimatter mines that disrupted Dominion formations, forcing their massive warships into choke points. And from deep space, AI-controlled drone swarms used suicide algorithms to slam into weak points with terrifying accuracy. The ARX pressed forward anyway. They shattered Earth's first defensive ring near Saturn, crushed several battle groups around Jupiter. Mars fell under siege, its outer colonies burned to glass. And still the Terrans fought. The final line was Earth. Every surviving Terran ship pulled into orbit. The sky was a graveyard waiting to be filled. Vance stood before his fleet, projected into every command bridge, every fighter cockpit, every orbital station. This is Admiral Elias Vance. The enemy has come to finish what they started. But they've forgotten one thing. We don't kneel, we don't break, and we never surrender. Let the galaxy watch. Let them remember. Let them see what humanity does when we're out of options. The ARX descended like gods of war, but Earth was no longer a blue pearl waiting to be crushed. It was a fortress. Orbital platforms fired at full saturation. Interceptor wings dove through burning debris to land payloads inside Dominion hangars. Command stations sacrificed themselves to ram capital ships. Civilian ships flew suicide runs to give the military a shot. Every continent, every ocean, every orbit fought. And then, the final move. The Indomitable bleeding power, surrounded by ARX ships, made a break for the harbinger of extinction to the Dominion's new flagship. Vance had made his decision. On board, Monroe shouted, Sir, if we ram, if you overload the core. I know. She clenched her jaw. Then let me go with you. Vance looked at her, smiled for the first time in days. No, someone has to finish the war, and someone has to remember. The last transmission from Elias Vance was short. For Earth, the Indomitable crashed into the harbinger, its core overloaded with a singularity charge. The detonation didn't just destroy the flagship. It collapsed a section of the local space-time grid. A third of the Dominion fleet was caught in the blast. Those that survived ran. The war was over, but Earth was silent. The skies were filled with burning wreckage. Entire regions had gone dark. Millions were dead. And yet as dawn broke over the Pacific, the people of Earth emerged from bunkers, shelters, tunnels, and looked up. The stars were still there, and they were free. Years passed. The Dominion never recovered. Its outer colonies rebelled. Its core systems fell into civil war. Its warlords turned on each other, each blaming the other for the disaster. Humanity didn't invade. They didn't need to. The memory of what Earth had done was enough. Statues of Admiral Elias Vance were raised on 100 worlds, not as a conqueror, but as the man who turned Earth into the immovable object. Children learned his name beside the stars. Alien cultures added Terran defiance to their history archives. And at the edge of known space, where the last Dominion outpost once stood, a beacon pulsed in an old Terran tongue. This was as far as they got. Beyond this point, the stars remember. Because in the darkest hour, when the galaxy thought humanity would die quietly, when no one believed help would come, humanity answered. And they came with fire.